You know, that feeling, it's just hard to ignore sometimes. When your blood sugar seems to be doing its own thing, maybe the scale is creeping up, that constant fatigue, the brain fog making things fuzzy.
Yeah, and maybe irritability, those cravings you just can't shake, trouble sleeping, and sort of humming in the background, that worry, that fear about what could happen long term.
Right? Things like amputation or heart problems or losing your sight. If any of that sounds familiar, well, you are definitely not the only one feeling that way.
Absolutely. And that feeling like you're pushing against a wall, putting in the work, but not getting the results you want, that's really what we're digging into today. We've been looking at some really interesting material. It offers a pretty different take on managing type 2 diabetes and prediabetes.
Exactly. Not the same old advice you always hear. This source really tries to unpack why the common ways might not be working for so many folks. And it points towards, well, a whole different way of thinking about it.
Yeah, and our mission here for this deep dive is really to pull out the key insights from this source, the bits of info that could give you a new perspective, maybe suggest another way to think about improving your health, without feeling like more medication is the only path forward.
Okay, so let's jump into the first big idea that really stood out from the source. It's this common assumption, maybe, that our medical doctor is the main person, the expert, to guide us through type 2 diabetes or prediabetes.
Right. And the source, well, it makes a strong argument that maybe that shouldn't be the only strategy. It hammers home the point that these conditions, type 2 and prediabetes, are fundamentally nutritional issues. They're about what we eat, how our bodies handle it.
Yeah, and this is where it gets really thought provoking.
Mhm.
The material claims that doctors, while obviously brilliant and essential for trauma surgery diagnosis, they actually get very little formal training specifically in nutrition.
The source mentions something like what, 1 day out of 8 years? That seems incredibly small.
It does. And the implication there is pretty significant.
Their expertise is often in managing the symptoms, prescribing medications, and they're excellent at that. But this source argues that maybe that training doesn't equip them as well to address the root causes, the deep nutritional reasons why these conditions develop.
It's like they're experts at fighting the fire.
Exactly. But maybe not as focused on what's actually fueling it in the first place.
And the source goes even further. It suggests that some doctors might even believe that type 2 diabetes just isn't reversible.
Which, if that's the underlying belief,
Then naturally, the solutions offered would lean more towards managing the condition long term.
right, rather than aiming to fundamentally address those nutritional drivers.
So if you connect the dots, it could shed light on why some of you listening might feel stuck, like you're on a treadmill. Maybe meds increase, but you don't feel truly better.
It definitely raises a big question. If your main guide isn't deeply specialized in the nutritional science behind it, who is? Where should you look?
Okay, and that leads us pretty smoothly into the second mistake, the source flags, which is this tendency many of us have to try different things: diets, supplements, exercise bursts, but in a kind of random jumbled order.
Yeah, the hit or miss approach. 1 week it's keto, the next it's some supplement you read about online.
Maybe pushing yourself hard at the gym even when you feel completely drained.
And the source argues this is a huge reason why people get frustrated and don't see lasting change. It claims there's actually a very specific order, a crucial sequence of steps needed to get that breakthrough they talk about.
And the payoff for following that sequence, well, it sounds like exactly what people are looking for. We're talking lower blood sugars, fewer cravings, more energy, less pain.
Clearer thinking, weight loss that actually sticks. The source really emphasizes that doing things in the right order leads to faster results, more consistency, and just less of that feeling of banging your head against the wall.
They use the example of Jessica, described as a busy working mom,
Right. She apparently tried all sorts of things, mix and match style, without real success.
until she followed this specific process in the sequence they lay out.
And the results they report are pretty dramatic, significant weight loss, getting off meds, even reversing her diabetes diagnosis.
Yeah. And they mentioned she felt embarrassed at first, which, I think a lot of people can probably relate to that feeling.
Absolutely. But it ended up being a really positive story for her, according to the source. It really highlights the importance of how you approach things, not just what you do.
Okay, so we've covered who you turn to for advice
Mhm.
and the order you try things in. The third big mistake, according to this source, is maybe the most fundamental. It's not truly understanding the why.
Yeah, why is my blood sugar high? Why is it so hard to lose weight? Why am I so tired all the time?
And the source suggests, again, that if you're mainly asking your doctor or maybe even diabetes educators these why questions.
You might still feel like something's missing because, again, it circles back to their training perhaps not being primarily focused on those deep nutritional root causes.
But here's the interesting part, the empowering part, according to the source. When you do understand the why, it changes things.
It's not just about the numbers anymore. It's about seeing the connections, identifying your personal triggers for maybe less healthy eating, realizing that high blood sugar could be linked to things you hadn't even thought about.
And that understanding, that knowledge, can apparently bring a lot of positive changes.
Less stress because things finally start to make sense.
Relief, knowing you actually can take steps that make a difference.
And maybe even finding some, dare I say, enjoyment in the process of getting healthier because it feels less like a battle and more like solving a puzzle.
They share Tatiana's story to illustrate this.
Ah, yes, she was told diabetes just ran in her family. Heard that one before.
Right, a very common thing people hear. But she apparently questioned it. And by digging into the underlying reasons, using this process they describe, she reportedly reversed her diabetes.
And the source highlights how that understanding shifted her whole outlook, made her feel less limited, more engaged with life again.
So these three mistakes, who you rely on for nutritional strategy, the order you try things, and not grasping the fundamental why, they seem to be the core issues this source identifies.
Exactly. And based on that, the source strongly implies that there's a better way, a more effective approach available.
Now, they don't spell out every single detail of their simple and guided process in the material we looked at.
No, it's more of an overview of the problems and the potential for a different solution.
But it definitely positions this process as the answer to overcoming those three hurdles we discussed.
It does touch briefly on the need for support. Mentions Janet's success being tied to 24/7, 365 support and accountability.
Right, through something called personal empowerment teams. So it hints at a more holistic approach, beyond just diet.
And those success stories they share, like Janet being off 18 medications, losing 60 pounds, diabetes reversed,
And Brigitte, off 10 meds, lost 65 pounds, now traveling the world.
they're certainly presented as powerful examples of what might be possible with this different approach.
So wrapping things up, the main message from this source seems to be a challenge to the conventional wisdom.
Yeah, it's suggesting that maybe focusing on who guides your nutritional plan, the sequence of your actions, and truly understanding the why behind your body's responses could be key.
It proposes that addressing these common pitfalls might open up a different, maybe more effective path to managing type 2 diabetes and prediabetes.
Which really leaves you, the listener, with something to think about.
If you've been struggling, feeling like you're just managing symptoms day to day, maybe not getting to the heart of the issue.
Could it be that your current approach isn't fully tackling those underlying foundational problems?
Is it worth considering if a different perspective, one focused squarely on those nutritional roots and a specific logical sequence of steps, might offer a way towards real, lasting improvement in your health and how you feel every day?
Something to definitely mull over.